I'm Halli Casser-Jayne, and welcome to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, a podcast akin to the great salons of times past. Pour yourself a martini, grab a spot on your favorite sofa, and listen to the great artists, writers, politicians, and celebrities of our day discuss and debate the current political and economic scene, art and music, film, literature, or maybe talk about the newest trends in fashion, design, and haute cuisine. Whether it's the current political cocktail or the latest must-read award-winning book, we tackle all topics and like to stir, and sometimes shake, things up. I wanted to let you know that we start this episode of the Halli Casser-Jayne Show by bringing you a new segment, Podcast America. In the coming weeks before the 2018 midterm elections, veteran journalist Matthew Cooper will be joining me here for a weekly conversation in which we slice and dice the current political landscape as we get to voting day. We begin there. Then, in the second half hour of the show, I'll bring you my conversation with New York Times bestselling author Antonia Felix. I had the pleasure to talk with Miss Felix about her wonderful new biography of Senator Elizabeth Warren, her fight, her work, her life. Stay tuned and enjoy the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. Let's get to it. Journalist and veteran White House correspondent Matthew Cooper is known for his in-depth reporting and analysis from Washington. Mr. Cooper has worked for some of America's most prestigious magazines, including Time, Newsweek, The New Republic, National Journal, and U.S. News and World Report. He now serves as a contributing editor to Washingtonian magazine. For the record, Cooper also earned national attention during the CIA leak case when he was held in contempt of court and threatened with imprisonment for his refusal to name his sources and to testify before the grand jury regarding the Valerie Plame CIA leak investigation, a case that went all the way to the Supreme Court. Matt has appeared on 60 Minutes, Meet the Press, Hardball, The O'Reilly Factor, and This Week with George Stephanopoulos. He has covered Donald Trump extensively, his hard-hitting and insightful profiles of the Donald, always well worth the read. And now, from here until Election Day, Matt will be my co-host on our new segment, Podcast America. I hope you enjoy. Let's talk. All right. So, Matt, I'm loving that we're doing this new segment.
It's terrific.
It's great. The two of us, guys who are listening, you're in for something else here. Who knows what's going to happen over the next few weeks as we get into the midterms. But Labor Day, gone, came, gone. It's ta-ta.
Right.
And today is Tuesday. We're recording this Tuesday evening.
We sure are.
Crazy continues to break loose. But before we begin, I want to give a nod to John McCain. What a send-off he got, despite the current president's shenanigans that included refusing to lower the flag to half-mast. And what a long, storied celebration of his he as a hero and as the great senator that he was. Fair to say the best and the brightest from both parties are not great fans of this president. That was quite amazing what happened at those memorials.
Well, absolutely. It was likened by some commentators to a resistance rally for the establishment, that this was kind of official Washington, and a lot of the country, too, saying, hey, this is what we value in our leaders. These are the qualities we like, personal heroism, bipartisanship, some degree of self-deprecation. And, I think by picking, and, I think McCain really sent very powerful messages by, organizing his funeral this way. And it was very organized before his death, having two former presidents, two people who had defeated him for nominations, for the presidency, do his orations. And, it was a very powerful few days.
It really, really was. And but all I kept thinking is, remember Death of a Salesman? Death of a kind of politics. Did we bury civility? Did we bury who we used to be with McCain? That's what I worry about.
Well, I don't know if we totally buried it, but it's partially submerged, to mix a metaphor. Look, he could be very partisan and tough at times. It wasn't that he was always sort of accommodating. It's more that he was bipartisan at times of national emergency and also at times when it mattered to him personally, and that he was always kind of, friendly and well-liked, so he had good personal relations with lots of Democrats, including Hillary Clinton and others.
He was a gentleman, Matt.
Yeah. I mean, he was a character, and look, obviously he would not be John McCain without his incredible personal story of enduring unspeakable cruelty and torture during the Vietnam War. And I think all those things, were rare and are rarer, but I don't think they're entirely gone. So
you give me hope. You give me hope, my friend. You give me hope.
I try.
Okay. That's why I love you. And I also want to talk about Meghan McCain, who I am not a great fan of. I think, she in my opinion, she's a partisan boy, more than her father ever was. But she was quite a lady. She really, you got to give her credit for the way she handled herself and her honesty and her feelings. And that's what I want to say about her. I don't know if you have anything to say about her, but I couldn't do this episode of the show and not say, wow, she did him proud.
Yeah, well, it's hard to think of too many daughters offhand who have sort of taken their father's legacy in politics and been the most vocal in their families to pursue it. I don't know if she'll ever see elective office, but, except for maybe Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, the daughter of Robert Kennedy. I can't think of another daughter of a famed Paul who's kind of picked up the
not quite the way she has.
The mantle and quite the way she has, a nationally known Paul. So, but she lent a powerful voice, and of course, you just had to emote for any daughter losing her dad.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we move on. We move on to Fear.
Right.
The name of Bob Woodward's new book, Fear. I think this is truly an oh my God moment in the saga of the Trump presidency, personally. Now, let me just run some things that are in there that I've picked up along the way and see what you have to say. Kelly called Trump an idiot. We already know, by the way, that former Secretary of State Rex Tillerson called him a moron. Matt, we're in an idiotic, moronic state in American history. I mean, and according to Bob Woodward, Pulitzer Prize winner, by the way, not once, a few times, I think, Trump called Sessions mentally retarded and a dumb Southerner who couldn't even be a one-person country lawyer down in Alabama. You got to say that's way too poetic, by the way, for Trump.
Right.
John Kelly called him the idiot who had gone off the rails. I had said this is the worst job ever. I mean, who are you going to believe, Woodward or Trump?
Right. Well, the thing is, look, I mean, these are people close to Trump who Woodward has spoken with. These are Trumpies indicting the president, not Democrats. And they are describing a kind of White House where they're protecting the country from Trump. And, it's in keeping with some of the things we've heard before. It adds more texture to it. Some of it is being denied, and, people have to take that as they will. But, this is pretty tough stuff. I'm old enough. I don't think you're old enough to remember the final days. The Woodward Bernstein about Nixon kind of losing it in the last weeks of his presidency. And it feels like Trump only took a few months to get to, that kind of crack up. So, the book's going to have a lot of impact. I'm also struck that how unprepared not struck by how unprepared the White House was for it. I mean, every White House deals with a Woodward book. It's just been a staple of presidential life the last quarter century. Bob Woodward has done these behind-the-scenes books, and most White Houses, they don't like it, but they kind of deal with it. They kind of have a strategy. They certainly have a strategy for when it's released to push back on things. It's like they were utterly taken by surprise that it even came out today. There's this weird phone call where, that the Washington Post released today of Woodward calling Trump, and Trump seems to, throw Kellyanne under the bus, saying that, he had never heard about Woodward's request for an interview. And then she throws a younger press aide under the bus for not getting the message around. I mean, it's.
But there's nobody working in that White House, Matt. I mean, that's the thing. He's got his team around him, but they haven't filled half of the jobs that used to be there to be filled.
They're
living in a bubble of very few people. Maybe that's why there's no response, or they're so overwhelmed, or they're so stupid, or so ineffectual.
I think they clearly, it seems they didn't want to give him an interview with the president.
Right.
I can understand that. That's their prerogative. But it seems like rather than admit that, they've kind of confected a story about how, Woodward's message never got to the right person. I know Bob Woodward. I don't think that was the problem.
I'm sure that was not the problem.
He's pretty good. He's pretty good at leaving a message.
Well, I mean, we all knew it was coming way before we knew it was coming. So They were leaking it was coming before we were supposed to know it was even coming. I want to bring this up though that Kelly, you said Kellyanne, but Sarah Sanders issued a statement. This book is nothing more than a fabricated story, many by former disgruntled employees, told to make the president look bad. And Trump told the Daily Caller's Sajar and Jedi, it's just another bad book. He had a lot of credibility problems. I would probably have preferred to speak to him, but maybe not. I think it wouldn't have made a difference in the book, I think is what Trump said out.
Yeah, I mean, generally, presidents have had other strategies for pushing back on Woodward in particular, given his, kind of fame and credibility. I mean, for instance, Bill Clinton. So when Woodward did his first book about Bill Clinton, it included an anecdote that got a lot of play on 60 Minutes, which had done a big piece about the book the night before it was released, and it was an anecdote about Clinton going ballistic over some slight that his staff had made towards the mayor of Chicago, and it was kind of portrayed on the news as like Clinton being slightly out of control. But the White House spun it. They didn't deny that he'd been angry, but they said, look, it was appropriate, and mayor of a major American city was slighted, and they found a way to kind of deal with the charges specifically rather than just trying to dismiss Bob Woodward as a liar, which is not really a very effective technique.
They're in a like I began this, Matt. They're in a pickle because it's really hard to go up with the kind of credentials that Woodward has.
It's not that there's no criticism of Woodward to be leveled. There were from the Bush and Reagan administration, Bush and Clinton administrations, and I'm sure Obama too. But it's
he's getting older.
He represents a particular press challenge that, like, every White House press operation knows they have to deal with it, just like the White House Correspondents' Dinner or a NATO meeting. It's like one of those things that's practically on the calendar, and you can plan for it, and you can kind of decide how you're going to do it. And these guys, they just didn't seem to be kind of aware of it.
They weren't. Another thing, Mattis, there's a piece in here that says Mattis ignored a presidential order to take out Assad. Here's the deal. They haven't denied any of the content, per se. I mean, that ought to be pretty quick to be able to prove one way or the other. I mean, there have got to be records on something like that. But you know what I'm saying to you? I mean, they're not denying the content. They're denying Woodward.
No, they're kind of broad brush denials that can, if I say, Halli, you shot that guy in Miami, and then you say, Matt Cooper, you're full of BS. That's not really a denial. It's sort of a broad brush denial.
Right. So it's not a denial. So obviously this book is pretty, are they in trouble and not soon enough? The mind whirls with all of this, but we move on.
But I think really the thing is that this is from Trumpies who have, decided he's really the problem and needs to be contained. And that's, that's serious.
We're going to talk about Kavanaugh and the hearings, but before we get to that is a very important point. I get the feeling, and I was trying to go back because, there's so much in my head with everything that I do these days. I was trying to go back and read little by little, Matt. It seems to me some people are truly dropping off the Trump train. People in the White House, people who are closer associates. Are you getting that feeling that people are starting to get, uh-oh?
Well, I'm not getting that as much. I mean, I think Congress is, I think he's holding the Republicans in Congress pretty well. And
until the Kavanaugh hearing's over.
Yeah, I mean, until the election.
Right.
I don't know.
I do. I get the feeling. I get the feeling that all is not well in Trumplandia, or as well as one likes to think. But that's a guessing game anyway. That's part of politics. But let's move on because we only got a few minutes. Kavanaugh.
Right.
Jeez.
Well, look, I covered Kavanaugh. Knew him a little bit in the Bush White House. Know people who know him.
All right, tell us about this man. Who is he really? Because I have a different...
Well, look, I think he's... people I know who are liberals and stuff really do like him. They just they find him very personable. They like him, and he's sort of Beltway bred. He's like the most inside Washington Supreme Court justice I can think of, because he grew up here. He went to prep school here, the same parochial school that Gorsuch went to, but Gorsuch at least went home to Colorado and made his bones there as a lawyer and a judge. Kavanaugh worked here. He was in kind of the conservative machine his whole life at the law firm Kirkland Ellis, and for Ken Starr, and for the Bush White House, and through the judiciary here. He's never tried a case. He's just kind of grown up in the legal architecture, in the conservative legal architecture of Washington. And so he's been kind of the anointed one for a long time. He's exactly who President Romney or President McCain would have appointed.
Except he was not on the original list. Why is that? He was in the modified list. He was in the modified list. He didn't make it to the first list, and I think there's something suspect there, among other fact that they're not willing to show all of his papers. Good God,
that's possible. Yeah, and not showing the papers is a bit much. I think in a sense it's a normal pick, because this is what any Republican president would have done, is appoint this guy. In a sense, it's abnormal because, he's going to potentially be one of Trump's jurors, not his juror, but his, role on the case involving Trump. And and it comes in the context of their having screwed Merrick Garland, and not allowing his seat for a vote. And, so there's a lot of really bad blood here. I think he is a very, very conservative guy to the right of Kennedy, very tactical.
Let me jump in here. So did you see his opening statement? I only saw a few minutes of it. Here's what he started with.
Yeah.
He started with
I love my kids.
That came a little later, actually.
Right, yeah.
No, I love my Trump. I mean, he began with bending over for Trump. And then from bending over to Trump, he went to invoking Kennedy, because Kennedy supposedly is the moderate in all of this, and he had to do that. Right. Okay. And then he went to the civil rights movement, as if he ever could care less about any of that. Then he went to his mom, so that was the apple pie thing.
Sure. Right.
The guy is listen to what I'm going to say. He's a phony. And the Supreme Court used to be a court about the good jurists. And it hasn't. And Democrats and Republicans are as much to blame. I mean, I don't think that's one of the other. This Merrick Garland thing was really over the top. I think and his polls, by the way, are terrible. He's not polling well in all sorts of different avenues, this guy Kavanaugh. And I guess the point that I'm saying to you is, I wonder if America is ahead of the politicians on this. Because they don't want somebody like that on the Supreme Court anymore. They do not want somebody who's going to get rid of Roe v. Wade. I mean, all the way down the polling, it shows. And I'm not talking about liberals. I'm talking about the independents and some conservatives. He's over the top for the American electorate. And I think that's interesting, not talked about enough. Talk to me.
Well, I think that's right. I mean, I don't think that the country's there on things like Roe v. Wade repeal, but we're going to go through the same kabuki dance that we've gone through with Roberts and Alito and Gorsuch and now him, which is to, they're going to say, oh, I haven't decided anything, and, I judge cases on the merits. And,
enough. And then that gets me to the Dem leadership, which we discussed a little bit last week, and it takes me to Matt, They actually have a case against this hearing going forward and delaying it, and they're playing it so stupidly. It is unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, are they going to shut are they going to try to shut the Senate down? I don't think they've played their last card yet, so...
Well,
we'll
the only card they have is delay, right? And there would be some, right? There were some who might say delay, but that's not going to get you anywhere anyway. I think it does actually get you somewhere if you delay. What are you feeling on that? What's your gut? You think they're just going to sit back and go, okay? I
think they'll try what they can, but I think the rules are pretty cast. They don't have a lot of options, and I think he'll get approved. Probably in time to join the court at the beginning of the term in October. So,
well, I think that they could stop him, and I know that a lot of the talk was boycott now, and I said no. Go through the hearings, point out implicitly and specifically that you don't have the goods on this guy because you couldn't read anything because nothing was put out on him. And then walk, and then go to Capitol Hill, because you've got the public behind you on this guy.
The problem is, of course, they didn't, they couldn't pull one or two Republicans over, and that's why. They may yet, but it didn't look that way. So.
Well, Kavanaugh did one stupid-ass thing today. Forgive my language, folks. He did one stupid arse thing today.
What was that?
The kid from
the kid, the Parkland kid.
Jamie Gutenberg's father. That's an ad waiting to be blasted all over Kingdom Come. That's an ugly moment. I'm sure you saw it. You know what I was talking about.
Oh yeah.
So that's a big mistake to start off with, and so I'm fascinated to see what happens there. Yes. I mean, I think they'll play it.
No, I think that will. But look, he's, I think he's going to be the justice, and so the interesting thing, and this is topic for another time, of what is Roe going to get chipped at or overturned, and what the consequences of that'll be. I think.
Yes, we will certainly be following that story for time to come. Okay, so let me go to the next thing. This is amazing to me. We are living in amazing times. So bigot Ron DeSantis versus Andrew Gillum. We're going to oh my God. I'll leave it to Florida. You and I discussed that the one who was coming up was Graham, more on the West Coast than the East Coast. And then these weird vote polls, again, freak everybody out. You know where it is today? Ron DeSantis, 47. Gillum, 50. Florida. Right. Oh, my God.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, it was certainly, it was a shocking win for Gillum last week. And,
but let me throw this at you on this, it's a crazy story. So a story breaks, and I can't remember the website, but it was a bona fide website that says that DeSantis actually had been the site administrator for what appears to be a white supremacist pub.
Oh, the Facebook thing, yeah.
Wait, what? No, this wasn't Facebook.
It's not the Facebook page.
It's not the Facebook page.
Where he was the administrator.
And the story gets buried. So I go nosing around, and sure enough, I can't think of the website now. It's annoying. Whatever. And there it was. But the Dems didn't pick up on it. And I'm thinking to myself, now why didn't they make hay out of something, right on the heels? Boom, 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 boom. But I guess they're saving it for a better day is all that I could possibly figure as to why they didn't make a noise out of it.
Had not heard that.
Yeah. So there's a lot. I'm down here, folks. So I'm giving you, and I'm in Central, so part of that corridor. And I'm shocked as hell, but a lot of people here are thinking DeSantis.
Well, that would be a remarkable achievement.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens there, but America might be changing. I don't know. I told you whatever, and we're running out of time. But I got to take up two things. One is Ivanka Trump. She's being sold as Trump's new job czar. Of course, he would pick a pretty young thing.
Yeah.
That she is to Trump's ugly old white male voter base, and they're going to trot her all over.
Oh, sure. Well,
I just wanted you to know that I think she's allowing herself to be used in a way. I tried to give her more credit than she deserves. That's my opinion. You have any quick thoughts?
Well, look, she's, the idea that she's somehow apart from the administration or there's a schism between her and her father, don't see it. I mean, she's does what, she's very much a part of the action.
Yeah, she's no Meghan McCain.
Yeah, she's not. She's not going to get.
She ain't going there, sweetie.
They go with what worked for them, so they'll keep coming back to this. I don't know. As soon as Jared gets peace in the Middle East, it'll all be good.
Oh, it'll all be fabulous. And I just want to say, speaking of peace in the Middle East, that she, who is a converted Jew, and I'm a Jew, so I will say this, during that service was singing High and Mighty Jesus loudly and clearly while Jared sat there, mouth completely shut tight, like, oh my God. And I made mention that to some of my crazy right-wing Republican friends who said, well, I wouldn't have done that, and I'm like, yeah, but that
what's that shaping Georgetown education?
Well, that's more footage. That's worth a play for. I want to bid a fond farewell and a fond adieu to Rahm Emanuel, who says today he will not be running for the mayor of Chicago again, which I think is the end of an era. And who pushed him out? And oh my God, I think there's a lot to this story.
Yeah, agree. I mean, I was really surprised. I thought he was going to try for a third term. I suspect he knew it was going to be tough and decided not to, but I don't know all the machinations that were involved. He had a bit of a scare last time. Look, I think a lot of the African-American community is done with him, and that's a tough place to start from. So,
well, I think it has something to do with what they're planning to do with guns and things like that in the conversation. And he was a punching bag for that, so they're going to take him out of the mix.
Well, that's interesting. Well, I look forward to reading more about that, too.
Yeah, it's going to be a big story.
He's been an interesting figure in the country.
Yeah, he has, and it'll be a great loss. I want to tell you that a friend of mine gave me a gift a few weeks ago, the entire DVD set of Aaron Sorkin's The West Wing, which I have been watching from start to finish, staying up all hours of day and night and doing. Is it? Oh my God! Number one, does it hold up? If the cars weren't different, you would have no idea. Right. It's brilliant writing. It's brilliant. And the saddest part of the story is that 99% of the things that they were fighting for then have not been solved now. And that, by the way, was produced, I think, in 1999 it started, so 2006. Yeah. So what makes me sad about it, Matt, and why I wanted to bring it up, is that it's a time when we were still optimistic. It's the last optimistic political show. It's not cynical.
It's not House of Cards.
It's not House of Cards. It's not. It's Camelot.
It's not Scandal.
It's not Scandal. By the way, most of the people who were on Scandal or in this, they all have the same agent. So it's really interesting to watch who got out of that, and how it went from. And also, they were in The American President. I never remember whether The American President came first or after. But I'm watching this thing, and I'm getting myself all what's the word for pissed?
Yeah, a little verklempt.
I was crying, and so it got me to thinking. How do we get from A to Z? And this is our generation. It's kind of a sad thing, but then it led me to this question. As we'll have to close here, and that is Trump a passing fancy, or is this it, buddy? What's your thought?
Well, I don't know. I mean, in some ways, he's a kind of a unique and rare figure. He's not likely to be, reproduced. But can there be Trumpism without Trump? I think so. I think those people who were upset enough at the system to vote for him are still pretty bummed. And, whether they gravitate towards something else or towards a Trump replica down the road, I don't know. But it's also hard to see our politics going back to where it was. It's not going to go back to, exactly what it was.
Does this not break your heart? You who've been in this.
Yeah. I think, you want to, whatever your politics, you want to see the country do well, and you want to see the system kind of work and, be able to look at the Capitol and be proud of it and not feel like, there are many great things about the United States. No, I don't think anybody really looks at the U.S. Senate these days and says, that's working great. That's fantastic. It's the envy of the world,
It's really very sad. It's
so I think
Heartbreak Hotel.
Yeah, I think it's tough.
I think we're screwed. Well, that my friend is where we leave it this week. See you next week.
Okay, see you next week, Halli.
I've been speaking with journalist Matthew Cooper. You can read his insightful reporting at Washingtonian magazine. You are listening to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. My guest today is veteran White House correspondent and contributing editor to Washingtonian magazine, Matthew Cooper, my co-host on Podcast America. And New York Times bestselling author Antonia Felix, her brand new biography, Elizabeth Warren, Her Fight, Her Work, Her Life. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern at hallicasserjayne.com and is available wherever you listen to your podcasts. Be sure to find me on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on whichever is your favorite app. You can find the Halli Casser-Jayne Show on your Alexa device, too. Oh, and come play with me on Twitter at the Halli CJ Show. Elizabeth Warren's rise as one of America's most powerful women is a stirring lesson in persistence. From her fierce support of the middle class to her unapologetic response to political bullies, Warren is known as a passionate yet plain-speaking champion of equity and fairness. But who is the real Elizabeth Warren? In her new breakthrough biography, New York Times bestselling author Antonia Felix carries readers from Warren's hardscrabble roots in Norman, Oklahoma, through her career as one of the nation's most distinguished legal scholars and experts on the economics of working Americans. Antonia Felix is the author of 18 nonfiction books, including works on Michelle Obama, Condoleezza Rice, and Sonia Sotomayor. She has appeared on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, NPR, and the BBC. Felix is a member of the advisory board of the Women's Freedom Forum, an educational organization affiliated with the United Nations. Let's talk with the author of the biography, Elizabeth Warren, Antonia Felix. Hi, Antonio. How are you, Antonia?
Hi, it's great to meet you, Halli. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
It's my pleasure to have you here. I'm so glad you wrote this book. What perfect timing. We need to know much, 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 much more about her, and you fulfill that duty. Thanks so much. Elizabeth Warren, her fight, her work, her life. You know, everyone rolls with their particular motivations in life. I was thinking about this when I was reading your book. You know, there's no doubt that she's fueled by a good fight. Can you think of any? She just loves to fight. She's a savior. And if we're to understand her fully, though, I really do think, and this is what I loved the beginning of the book when you take us back to her beginning. Talk to me about Elizabeth Ann Hearing, Norman, Oklahoma. Let's get started with her parents, financial status, their politics. Give us the background.
Yes, growing up in Norman, Oklahoma, which is a small university town just south of Oklahoma City, a working class family. They called themselves middle class, but I think today we would think of them more as working class. And her mom stayed home, and it was a home in a neighborhood just on the edge of the grassy plains, and they lived from paycheck to paycheck. Things really heated up though when she was about 11 years old. Her dad had a heart attack and was out of work for a while, and they had hard times. They lost the car and were worried about losing the house. So her mom went to work and got a job answering the phones at Sears, and it was tough financially, but they made it through because that wage could actually take care of a family back in the day, a minimum wage. So it was just that kind of ordinary, typical working class life, paycheck to paycheck. And when she was in high school in Oklahoma City, she was in a relatively new high school where most of the students were from rather well-off families. And she noticed that difference that was definitely there. And she even had to skip some debate meets because her family couldn't afford to send her along and pay for the little hotel fee along the way for a trip like that. So she understands those issues firsthand that a lot of working class and middle class families feel, that kind of squeeze.
I said in the beginning, we all are fueled by something. And so in one word or two, what is she fueled by?
I find it really interesting how she explains that. She said her father took this financial situation, the pressures of finances. What he did was ignore it and push it away and try to never think about it. What she did was become a law professor and specialize in bankruptcy and the plight of, working people, the economics of the middle class. So she wanted to discover it and explore it and find out, and eventually influence some policy about all of that. So that was, I would say, her motivation was kind of opening up the wound and really feeling it all and learning all she could and eventually doing some good with it.
So she goes to a fight. And that's one of the things that I've always admired about her personally. There's nothing that she seems to be afraid of, but she also seems to go right into the den, whatever the fight is about. That's not a whole lot of people like that, particularly in politics, who will play all sorts of games about that kind of stuff. Her teenage years, so she winds up now in this next town, and she's a very pretty young girl, I have to say. Prettier than
Yes, you see those pictures. It's through the years of being such a young high school student and then a college student and a young mother. It's really fun to see that, to see those years, because we're used to seeing her on television now as a 69-year-old.
Right, and she doesn't look 69, by the way. I want her skin. Her teenage years, there's a lot of debate, and I think that's important.
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
That's where she developed her confidence and found out where her real gifts are. She was only 13 when she started ninth grade in Oklahoma City at a big high school in northwest part of the city, and she joined other organizations to try to make friends and get in, be a normal high school student. But what she really liked was debate, and she was good at it. She ended up winning a national meet with her debate partner in her senior year, and the way she excelled at it, as I said, it gave her this confidence. She knew that she was good at this, and this was a skill, and there was more to her than just a kid who was going to graduate and look for a husband and, settle down to be a wife and mother. She had some new expectations for herself, and debate really did that for her. It also gave her a full scholarship to George Washington University. So she was no slouch or ordinary debater. She excelled. She really did, and she learned a lot about herself through that.
I think that excellence is just a part of her makeup that you see right from the beginning, going all the way through. I was amused, but then you think about it, not. Her parents were Republicans. She started out herself as a Republican. Oklahoma. Actually, though, Oklahoma's, I was just doing something about Oklahoma and found out that it used to be a very Democratic state, kind of like West Virginia used to be Democratic, and now it's, staunch Republican. But in her day, she grew up in this Republican family. Talk to me a little bit about that, because I think that's part of her career trajectory. No?
Well, yeah, and it is interesting to kind of read up about the history of politics in Oklahoma, and I do cover that a little bit to put some context in here. It was a real transformative at the time. Let me put it that way. Things were shifting, and her family, her three older brothers all went into the military, and she had kind of a conservative bent herself as a high school kid, and she started to vote Republican, and she was, at some points, she was an independent, kind of ran the spectrum of parties. But then as she became a scholar and was specializing in bankruptcy law and learning about how this free market system really works for some people but is not so much a benefit for others, she saw these cracks in the system, and that's what really turned her into a card-carrying Democrat. She's a capitalist. She is devoted to the free market system, but on the terms of having rules so that it's a fair field for everybody, and it benefits everybody, not just the wealthiest and the top corporations. So that's been there for a long time, and that's what turned her into a Democrat and has turned her into such a a populist figure because people resonate with that now, especially after the recession.
You're going to laugh about this, but her delivery, her style of communication is, I won't say it's abnormal because that would make her sound weird, but she does have a cadence to her. You lived, breathed, and died this woman for so long to write this wonderful book. Do you know what I'm talking about? And I wonder where that comes from. When she talks, her sentence, the tone of her sentences are different, the inflections than most people. I'm always riveted when I listen to her or watch her speak. Am I off at the wall on that, or do you pick up on some of that? What I'm talking about?
Oh, absolutely. You're right on about that, because that, again, is part of what has made her such a populist. She's able to take these intricate policies and financial policies and when she was a watchdog over the TARP bailouts, wanting transparency there, she's able to take all of that kind of information and make it so straightforward and simple so that all of us can understand it. That's one of her greatest gifts, and she's always had that talent. I think part of that comes from being a professor, where you need to be so clear about your material, and also being a lawyer. That's about being clear and having the facts in such a rational order and backing everything up so thoroughly. That's part of being a scholar and a legal mind. And perhaps this just being from Oklahoma, being from a plain-spoken, straightforward part of the country, she internalized that and became a spokesperson that all of us can understand. And as you say, it's part of her popularity. People appreciate somebody who can interpret things in such a clear way, things that are complex, but things that are so important for all of us to understand.
And earnest. She is incredibly earnest. I think of everybody on Capitol Hill right now. She is the most earnest performance of any of them. She when she goes off to GW to move forward a little bit, she winds up staying there. It was 2 years, right? And then she left to marry her sweetheart, Jim Warren. That seemed out of character to me. Talk to me.
Well, I find that such an interesting part of her story, because when she's growing up in the 50s and 60s, the message of our culture was that women, if they go to college to become better partners for their husbands, so that their husbands can thrive, but not to have careers for themselves. So she was dealing with that message coming from society and from her classes at school and from her mother. Her mother did not like the idea that she wanted to be a teacher. Even when she went away to college, she said, "Don't turn into one of those radical feminists. You should be a wife and mother and put that foremost." So she had these, but then the debate had given her so much confidence, as I said, and she knew that she could do something with her life, do something else with her life, be part of the world. Those were these two contrasting forces pulling her apart. And at that point, after her sophomore year in college, when Jim shows up, he swept her off her feet, because he had graduated a couple of years, maybe 3 years before her from high school. So he was already out of college. He had a job as a mathematician at IBM, was working on the NASA space program, and was just so entrenched in real life, and he wanted to settle down with her. Well, she was kind of godsmacked by that and swept away. So those opposing forces, that's a lot of tension to hold, and at that point in her life, she went the way of traditionalism that she grew up with.
It didn't work. She did have what? How many? She had the daughters. They had the daughters and
2 children. Yeah.
Right. And
a boy and a girl.
A boy, and then they wind up getting divorced. And
they do wind up getting divorced.
Right. Mm-hmm. How was that for her? This is a woman who doesn't like to lose. Let me just say that, Antonia. This is not a woman who gives up easily and wants to lose. So we'll talk a little bit about that. It gives us insight into her.
And you talk about earnestness. I think that really shows up in this part of her life when she's written about it. And she's written about how devastating it was to have gone into that marriage with, there were certain expectations, and Jim had expectations that she was going to be this traditional wife and mother and really be completely fulfilled with motherhood. And that's just not the way it measured up. And she knew that that was the agreement they had, and that she was the one who grew away from that agreement. Yes, she loved being a mother. She loved her children, but she also loved being a law professor and just throwing herself into this field that meant so much to her and had such a future, such a fascinating future for her. She didn't think it was fair to have to give something like that up just for tradition. So they grew apart, and it wasn't nasty or anything. It was just one of those agreements. And I think that makes her more human. And the fact that she's so earnest and forthright about how she felt about it, that she failed her kids and failed her husband by not living up to those certain expectations. I kind of admire that sort of honesty spoken about publicly.
Right, absolutely. But, nobody's perfect.
Right.
Well, for sure. And I wanted to go down this road with you a little bit. She's earnest. Some people think she's earnest to a fault. And certainly by people's definition, she's the poster child for the proverbial bleeding heart liberal. But sometimes I worry that she's a cliche. Tell me why she's not.
A cliche bleeding heart liberal, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think she's not, because she has come into politics from such a different trajectory. And as you say, the earnestness is so genuine, because she believes in the progressive agenda. She believes in it because she studied the experience of working people and middle-class people for so many years, for decades, that she sees how the system works. She sees it from the inside out, really understands it, and really feels the inequity of it. There's an injustice there. When somebody is filled with a sense of seeing injustice and is just the sort of person that feels that something has to be done, I think you're born that way or you're not. And she was born that way. This is meaningful for her. This trying to make a difference in the world is meaningful for her. So other liberals who you could call bleeding heart liberals, yeah, maybe they have, of course, many of them, perhaps most of them are very earnest as well, but they don't have perhaps that combination of a background of being so steeped into why these injustices are there, how they've been created, and which would add more fire in the belly to that kind of righteous, anger. And I'm not going to say she's not an angry person, but as you say again, earnestness is such a good word. She comes at it from an interesting vantage point, an interesting career of experience that others don't bring, and it shows. It shows that it is very honest.
Right.
And
let me help you out here, because what I hear here is, or what I discern of her is, A, she's genuine. She's the real deal. And I think that's what, by the way, irritates the hell out of Trump about her. It's hard to go up against.
Well,
real.
A lot of people irritate Trump.
Well, but
a lot of
but
people
she really irritates
yeah.
him. I mean, in a big, horrible way. But that's because I don't think they and for different reasons. He gets irritated at people. But with her, I think it's hard to come up against somebody who's real, who's genuine, who really feels the things that this woman seems to feel, because where she got was part of her own experience, which, what can I say? As long as we brought up Trump, by the way. So let's go, Pocahontas. You spent a lot of time in the book on this, and I think that's a good thing. Talk to me about this whole episode.
Well, it first came up, the controversy around her claim of Native American identity first came up when she was campaigning to be the senator from Massachusetts, and her opponent claimed that she had used this minority status to check off boxes on applications and, job forms and things like that to try to portray her as a very ungenuine person, when, in fact, as all the reporting showed and the extensive investigations that went into this, that was just not true. She never did that. She never checked those boxes. her claim to the ancestry was just part of her family history that she was always very open about. As the main part of that was that her parents had to elope because on her father's side, that side of the family didn't like the fact that Pauline had Native American ancestry, so they didn't want him to marry her. So they chucked the whole real wedding thing and drove down the road and were married by a justice of the peace instead. So those are pretty central family stories, and just the way that she grew up. And, of course, when you're a white person from Oklahoma, there are a lot of white people from Oklahoma claim some sort of Indian ancestry because it was Indian territory, and it's a common thing. But she never used that for trying to gain an advantage as a minority. But the fact that the president is now labeling her with a racial slur just to poke at her, it's just, it's unconscionable because it's enormously offensive to every Native American in the country to have one of their historical figures used as a racial slur. It's just outrageous. And the way Warren has dealt with it, besides jabbing back a few times, is saying that whenever he says that, I'm going to respond by having an opportunity to talk about the issues facing the Indian community, and try to make something good out of something really, really bad. So that's how she's handling it.
There's an old saying, I don't know if you ever heard of it, and it goes like this: if they're shooting at you, you know you're doing something right. So,
yeah, good point. Didn't go to Washington to twiddle her thumbs.
No,
right?
And if Trump is after her, he obviously sees her as the threat that she very well, could be. So why bother if she's not? Because he's not going to take her down on that. That's for sure. She's gone around to 2 or 3 or 12 with Republicans in the Senate. Mitch McConnell, for one. She's very racially conscious. She's wonderful. That whole incident on the Senate floor with good old Mitchie baby. I call him Bitchy baby. He's like a girl that way. I shouldn't say that on air, but I do. It became the motto for the new era of solidarity over women's rights. Let Liz speak as a result of all of that. Is she amused by any of this?
Well, I'm sure she's amused about how things turn out. That I'm sure the last thing on her mind when she was participating in that debate on the Senate floor about whether or not Jeff Sessions should be the next Attorney General, I'm sure the last thing on her mind was the fact that a slogan would come out of it and kind of reverberate around the entire world, as you said, to unify women. And the timing for that was pretty incredible. And it just showed so clearly where these divides still are. Yeah. I think with the fact that women are in power, they have to deal with a lot more than men do, of course, in their positions. They still have to defend their positions and defend themselves. And silencing somebody, especially when she's trying to bring up a point about race and vote obstruction, that's a racist act and that should be a strike against Mr. Sessions. The fact that it came up around that is so telling about where we're at right now. And her persistence in finishing her letter, reading that letter by Coretta Scott King out in the hallway and videotaping it on her phone, that just shows that these kind of things don't shake her. It may surprise her that these things go this far, but she's been a senator now for a term. She's seen it all.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I want to go back to this briefly, which is she was a single mom. She got herself through undergraduate and then through law school. God bless, right? And then, and love finds her again with this wonderful Bruce Mann who seems like quite a man, I must say. She adores him, and she proposed to him.
Yeah.
I never knew that. They've been married over 30 years. He's very much a part of who she is, wouldn't you say?
Yes, I think that this is something that is going to engage people about this book, about this story, is this relationship is so positive, and they're so supportive of each other. I find that really inspiring, and in an age of political partnerships that don't turn out so great, they are really a soul pair and have been so good for each other. And it was fun to delve into, his area of the law. He's such a wonderful writer. He writes about the history of law, and sometimes their topics intersected a bit, and I could sort of imagine what it was like for them at the dinner table or sitting in front of the fire, talking about their latest discoveries, and a lot to talk about in the household when you're both doing that kind of research. Just a really interesting relationship.
She's very lucky. She found her best friend is what she found, and yeah.
It sounds like it.
Yeah,
yes.
Doesn't it? And she wishes that for all, which I think is lovely. So you spend all this time. How long did it take you to do all this research and write this book? There's a lot of work in here.
Oh, it's about a year-long project.
Really?
About a year long, yes.
Just has all sorts of wonderful details, and any fans of Elizabeth Warren, and any who aren't, really ought to read this. Eye-opening. You spend all that time on her. Clearly you're a fan, but no one's perfect. What are her weaknesses? What do you see standing in the way of her in the Oval Office?
Well, some of the observations that people have made who are inside, there's the insiders, and she was told this in no uncertain terms. When you're an insider, you don't speak out against other insiders, and of course she didn't take that to heart. But so there are those inside the Beltway and in the halls of power in Washington who think that she should be more of have more of the attributes of a colleague than perhaps she does at times. Maybe she speaks too soon when she disagrees with a colleague, like she's done at times with a fellow Democrat, Heidi Heitkamp. That those kinds of things have rattled people about her just when it comes to being a senator, being a power player in Washington. But I think that her impact as such a popular senator, as such a popular leader in the country, has really overshadowed those kind of distinctions, because she gets things done. She creates these alliances. She gets that agenda out there. But like you said, nobody's perfect, and maybe those were really the only things that I could uncover that have been critical about her in her role now as a senator. Maybe there could be more, maybe spend a little more time thinking about how you're going to respond to a colleague, something like that. But
Heidi Heitkamp is
part of it.
Yeah, I was going to say, but Heidi Heitkamp, Democrat, really? It's interesting.
Yeah,
there is that too.
She's got an interesting position.
Exactly, absolutely.
She does.
So, do you think she's going to run in 2020? Do you think that is what this is all about, or she's playing kabuki with us, or she doesn't know for sure? Well, what are your thoughts?
I have to tell you that recent events just this month have me thinking that, she is going to throw her hat in the ring, because she came out with these two bills, one after another, 1 week after another, that lay out this really big, broad platform about no less than anti-corruption and how to reform capitalism itself. She brought out this bill saying corporations need to put their priorities on more than just the shareholders. They need to have the workers involved. They need to have the whole society involved, and to get out of this narrow bubble of just working for the shareholders. That's a rehashing of capitalism that other people like, Robert Reich have been writing about, and she turned that into a bill, and then she comes up with this anti-corruption bill saying Congresspeople shouldn't own stock because it's a conflict of interest, and we have to get rid of this lobbyist system and other real sweeping corruption ideas, policy changes. To me, those kind of bills coming out boom, boom, right after another, that sounds like a presidential agenda. So I think this is a warm-up. I think this is a hint.
Thanks, Antonia. Great book. Really enjoyed talking with you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. This was great. Thanks so much.
Sure thing. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I've been speaking with Antonia Felix. Her new book is Elizabeth Warren, Her Fight, Her Work, Her Life. For more information on Antonia Felix and her book, visit her website at antoniafelix.com and find her on Twitter at FelixAuthor. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show is a production of Resec, LLC. Be sure to tune in to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show at hallicasserjayne.com or listen on your favorite app. New podcasts are posted Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern.